So fun fact, when I had a big old crush on Paul, I had a jacket made with that logo on it in the background. I
I
sure as
still
hell
got
did.
it. It's over there somewhere.
How weird was I? And I would do it again because he's so adorable. You just hello.
Hello, how's it going?
Well, it's going. Tell me how you're doing. What's going on?
My hot topic of the week
Okay, we'll
is
go for it.
just the drama of everything. There's so many events like starting to happen in Longview, like with Pride coming up and everyone getting ready for Pride. And it's just, oh my geez, Louise. There's just so much drama with it all. I'm just trying to coop my life right now, trying to deal with my own things, like my new glasses. Do you love them?
I was about to say something's different here.
I got my new glasses, so I'm
Okay.
excited. I love them
Okay.
so very much.
I don't know what that was, but something was different. I was like, that's not a new background.
Nope,
Yeah.
not new backgrounds. Same old Gemini backgrounds.
So I do. So Pride last night. When I woke up, I watch news a lot, and so I was watching NBC, and they just kept talking about how there's threats to Pride this year, and like the United States government is putting that out, and they always put out like a level, but this year it's higher, and they're saying
Yeah,
it's from like ISIS, and I haven't heard of ISIS in forever.
I haven't
Like,
heard anything about like ISIS. Just your same old dumb rednecks that I'm used to.
well, the dumb rednecks don't scare us. We're from East Texas.
Exactly, but they do scare us still sometimes.
They do.
Yes, girl, they can get
Take them.
crazy. I don't know.
No.
It's just
Oh, okay. So you're talking about the rednecks on the crystal meth. Now those you cannot take, but the other rednecks we can totally take those.
yes, absolutely.
We don't know how the other ones are going to act. Like it.
That part, and you never know if you're going to have those protesters or like
Well, you're
what's
going to
going
always have
on.
protesters, right?
Exactly. You're always gonna have. Well, I don't know. Last year, since we've been doing it in Mod Cop, we haven't really had protesters. Sorry, my eyes are real puffy. I haven't like been out of bed in like 8 days. Is what it feels like. But I have been. But I haven't.
Oh, I was about to say, is that your way of telling me that I look puffy? Because I did not get to look in
No,
the
you don't
mirror.
look puffy at all. I just know I look puffy as shit right now. Just because, like, legitimately, like I've been working from home a lot right now.
Hmm.
And then I've just kind of got up and like done a little bit of like marketing with the home health and stuff, but not a whole lot.
Hmm.
Like just trying to lay low at the moment because they're remodeling my office. There's not a whole lot for me to do at the moment. So
Must be
that's what
nice.
I'm doing.
And so they are looking for a marketer. That's crazy because I didn't see that.
So,
So moving along, um, we
so
talked.
what's like your hot topic of the week or your
Well, my hot
thing?
topic of the week is something I've been actually since before we started this show. I've wanted to bring it up to you, and I have not brought it up
Okay.
because we were learning or whatever. But I want to do an episode because
Well, it's bold.
one week I want my inspired to be the whole reason I came up with inspired or irritated was because I wanted to do an inspired over 1990 early 2000s era interviews with divas. And because if you looked at those, they were all fucking laying on beds. They were like
Yeah, that is
we did the
true.
whole interview. Like Mariah would just be like, "Oh, I'm Mariah," and Madonna was just there vulgar with her coochie showing. And
Yeah.
I want to do a podcast where we're just laying in our beds,
I'm here for it. I would do it.
but not like one of those because I saw some other podcasts that do it where they like covered up. It's no, I want diva,
Right. You
diva.
want to look like sexified, like 90s woman hot kind of thing.
Yeah, like you are
Yeah.
a 1990s diva, and I
I
didn't
can
want
get
to
into
ask Paul
that.
to do it today, so I did not ask him.
And I
But
really want to start getting more in drag. Like this week, like this today, I intended fully on getting in drag. However, I just was not like I don't know. The
I just
motivation
figured I
wasn't
would
there,
never
and
get
all
you in
my
drag.
makeup is still at RMC. So That was the problem.
Well, I thought you decided to not do drag on this show. Like you would get ready
No,
for
I
it.
think I want to start doing drag on this show. I mean, why not? I think it adds more fun to it.
I think so
But I just like
too.
maybe not like a serious like like you normally see Gemini drag, but like a drag that you like
Can
would
you
never
just
see me
throw it
like
on?
yeah, where I just kind of put a little bit of it on, just kind of very cute and faint, a little petite.
Did they not make a filter for that? I mean, we could just find it, and
I
it'll be
wish, but they know. Not that would make me want like
not Gemini famous.
yeah,
But you got to
not like
take that down in
me.
the background because if you're
Yeah.
there, you can't have
That
you
means I
there.
have to have I'd find new backgrounds.
Yeah. But I want to do the 1990s diva thing because I just think if you look at that, that was so ridiculous, and love every minute of it. Okay. So you already know Paul
Yes.
and kind of brought him on a minute ago. But so Paul is besides somebody that I have been literally wanting to marry since I have never even met him in person, but I sent him a jacket one time that I had made for
Come
him.
on,
I,
jacket.
I I'm sorry, I'm not trying to marry you. We're friends. But I'll get you a jacket.
I mean, I remember this nice young woman who told me that she was going to send me all this stuff for helping her out over a year ago. And
No, the
not that I
company
want
has your
that stuff
email. The
anyway.
the company, which we now know, but they were gonna. She did. She had your address. Elena said she sent it,
Well, Elena lied.
and I
Maybe
can't
that's
ask
why
her.
nobody likes her.
I like her. I like her a lot. But I'll ask Holly. Um, but I will say that you were also supposed to send me some airbrush makeup.
Yeah, which I have actually to show you tonight.
I was about to say because you haven't sent it.
I sure haven't because I never got my stuff.
I was like, you made this promise after the fact. You were just coming up with the excuses. Anyway, so Paul, I have been in love with Paul for years, but that is not why he's on. This is not like a tactic just to get close to Paul because I'm
I
not his
love how
type.
you like smile after that.
But no, anyway, so that's how I know him. I never really met him in real life, but I've been inspired over the years about his story. And I was kind of shocked today. I didn't even know he wrote a second book. I guess my algorithm doesn't show me everything because I was amazed doing my research that he had written a second book. So he's a two-time author. He is so accomplished, owns his own business, which is actually something that would help us. And so that might be something. We may be hiring Mr. Paul. He already told me about some algorithm stuff today, so I thought that was
Hey.
cool. So, okay, so I'm going to welcome Mr. Paul, who I do not have a crush on. That would be weird. Hi.
Hey, how are y'all?
Good? Good.
Doing good, doing good. Looking crazy at this angle. Y'all just look all pretty and pink, and I'm just over here like, eh.
I know everything's pink. My face, my shirt, lighting.
So,
And I could be the same height as y'all. I felt real short next to y'all.
well, we can change everything. I want to get mine because I'm on this far side, but I lean in a lot. And so I don't know how to use all this. Paul can help us because he does marketing for a living.
Yes.
And he's
He
like,
knows how to use the programs to make
Hey,
it
you're
look
doing pretty good. You're doing pretty good.
and he agreed to come on this show, which is like, okay, Paul, you're not helping us, we're helping you. So tell us about you, Mr. Paul, or tell the people who might not know, because you are streaming on Gemini's, the PROUDcast, which has a lot of trans women, and then my personal, which has a lot of people from Vietnam. And I don't know why. And yeah.
Yeah, so my name is Paul Savage. I'm the owner of Savage Creative Solutions, a full-service marketing agency here in Shreveport. And then I also run Shreveport Secrets, which is a positive news and kind of hidden gems website for Shreveport Bossier. And then, as you mentioned, I'm an author and have published a couple of books as well.
Which he modeled for the first one. And I found out today he did not model for the second one, but that actually looks like it could be you on the cover.
It really does. It really does.
Yeah,
I should have
tell
just said
people.
yes, right?
Yeah, because I would have bought it. So first thing I have for you, so Shreveport Secrets, you told me about it today. I had never known about it until I saw it right before that. I think that that's kind of interesting. And so do you want to kind of explain what that is? And
Yeah. So Shreveport in particular, I guess you could say, because I live here, I notice it, but it's probably not specific to Shreveport. But the media is to be very negative in what they report, and it often tends to be the things that will get the most clicks, or the most engagement, and that sort of thing. And it's led to a really negative perception of our city online that isn't necessarily accurate when you come here and visit with the people here and experience the things that we have to offer. And so I wanted to kind of counteract that social negative perception, as well as kind of the SEO or search engine side of all those negative articles when people search Shreveport. And so I started Shreveport Secrets as a means of sharing only positive news and kind of hidden gems in our community to help people truly see all the positive things and the great things that we have here. Because we really do have a lot. We have a lot of what Dallas has and several other larger cities without the traffic and without kind of a lot of the other hassles that a lot of the bigger cities face. And so that was kind of the catalyst for Shore Secrets.
Now, Jim and I, both being from East Texas, I didn't grow up in Longview, but I grew up in the Lufkin area, and we would always go to Shreveport. But you would never make that decision at a good hour. It was not a planned thing.
Right.
And so when I think about those times in Shreveport, I think, oh my God, thank God that I made it, whatever. But I can't imagine how many people did not have such a good experience. And I also
I know you heard this, right? She's been here and she didn't even let me know she was here.
But what I'm saying though, stop it, because I already be marrying you in my head. And I just spoke Cajun.
Can't take her anywhere.
But listen,
No way.
I'm moving in tomorrow. But I would imagine that those experiences and like what outsiders do give it a reputation. Like nobody knows about the real Shreveport outside of it. All they know is the gambling, the fun, because we go there at this hour. And I saw Joan Rivers there one time, and I was so drunk I can't even remember.
How can you not remember meeting her?
I remember I went there and I did not get to see Paul.
Solid save.
Yeah. I was like, where's Paul? But I would imagine like most of the reputation about Shreveport isn't from Shreveport.
Exactly. And the majority, social media has done a really good job of giving a minority group a voice, but in some respects, giving a megaphone to a small group of people can also have a detrimental impact too. And that's what I was seeing in our city, was that a handful of people were the ones holding the megaphones, and then that was drowning out all the positive things that we had. I mean, we have a symphony and an opera. What mid-sized city like Shreveport has, and you can get to it at an affordable price without the traffic. I mean, it's things like that that set Shreveport apart from other areas.
Being from the other side of the lake, because in East Texas, I always tell people we're the same. We're from Louisiana too. We're just on one side of the lake, and we have better roads. I just made a joke about better roads, but I know that everything in Louisiana has a lot of culture, and I think that's really cool. What I want to know is, how do you think Bossier feels? Because nobody knows how to spell it. Nobody says its name anymore. I mean, it must be pretty butthurt.
So I don't know that that's completely true. So here's a little short story. When I started Shreveport Secrets, I was like, we're only going to focus on Shreveport. There were other blogs, other sites that kind of promoted Bossier in other ways. And so I was like, you know what? We're going to do strictly Shreveport, promote Shreveport, because nobody's doing that. And the farther I got into it, the more I realized that they're sister cities. You can't coexist without the other. What makes Bossier great is Shreveport, and what makes Shreveport great is Bossier. There's things that each offer that you can get right across the river in 15 minutes. And it's both cities and their proximity to each other that makes our area great. And
It's like
so
Dallas, Fort Worth.
we kind of did a new Best of Bossier series where we started including Bossier and different things, because Bossier really is a part of Shreveport, and Shreveport really is part of Bossier.
Well, now my joke doesn't sound as good, but I think you just found your third book. Your third book is about how they're together, because I've always thought that Dallas, even though Dallas land-wise is big, I've always thought that Dallas, Fort Worth wouldn't be as much without each other.
Mm-hmm.
Even though Fort Worth kind of gets crapped on. Oh, well, that is your third book, and as your future wife, I think that I just helped you.
You're so stupid.
And I told him that you were going to be the one acting up earlier.
You did.
Okay. Well, Jim and I had some questions for you too, but I would like to kind of gear towards what's happened to you the last few years. And so the reason that you wrote the 2 books, it is no small feat to do what you've done. And so how did you find the courage to fight cancer? Being somebody that's so public, was that scared for you? Were you scared to be public about this? Because let's not play, in our culture. We post the best pictures. We post how we're physically the best fit. We don't talk about weaknesses because we already get judged. And so you were okay going out there and doing that. And how did you come to that naturally, or?
So I think my marketing background probably helped me in that respect to feel more comfortable about sharing so openly. I do it for my business. I'm the face of my business. And so in that respect, I'm sharing publicly often. I do it for clients a lot of times. So I think that's probably where, I don't know that I would say courage, but like that courage came from to share that. But there were some people in my families who had a reservation about me being so open and if that was good for me at the time. But it really kind of served as therapy and was my therapy throughout that period, because after the diagnosis, things moved so fast that I didn't really have time to think about anything. I mean, within a matter of weeks, everything, well, really a week, everything was happening. So
Were you chronicling everything like in a journal? Like, how did you come up with? It's vulnerable to write a book, but I mean, did you recollect everything afterwards? Did you have notes throughout the whole time? Like,
yeah, so the truth is it was never meant to be a book. That kind of came about after the fact. The blog post kind of came about as I was starting chemo and getting into my first cycle of chemo. I had an immense amount of support, which was great, but I often couldn't respond to all of the messages or had the energy to respond to all the messages and comments that I was getting, kind of asking how I was doing or if you have an update and that sort of thing. And so having a marketing background, I knew how to design websites. I knew how to set up a blog. I was like, well, I'll just set up a blog. I'll write it once whenever something happens that I feel is important to update people about. I'll share it as a blog to my social media, and then I can do it once and everybody has an update about what I know, and I'm not having to exhaust myself on top of chemo. And so that kind of started as those blog posts to share updates to people who were supporting me during that time. And then it was about a year afterwards that I was still getting messages from wives, girlfriends, mothers of people who had brothers or sons who were going through testicular cancer. And it was actually one of their idea that you should really publish this as a book. And so then about a year after I had finished chemo, the blog came down and those blog posts were turned into Diary of a Testicular Cancer Survivor.
I completely forgot about the blogs, like 100%, because I remember reading those at the time. And I'll let Jim and I ask some questions, but thank you for reminding me of that, because I completely forgot. Is that was a cool thing at the time? I mean, not cool, but
Yeah, it worked as a great mechanism for keeping everybody updated and kind of sharing my journey.
That's you.
Is it my turn? Is it my turn now?
Yeah, I love
Okay.
your shirt. I almost
Oh,
wore that.
oh,
But
thank
Paul's
you.
Paul's
It's
here.
called
So.
from Timu, so.
Wait,
I will put cheap shit. I don't care.
I saw a meme that was like a Kardashian saying, "Just waiting for Timo to sell houses." And
I'm telling you though, they're starting to sell like full ass evening gowns and everything. It's crazy. So I guess like my biggest thing with you, Paul, is I just like watching you go through your journey. I was appreciative with how open that you were, because also having had testicular cancer in my life, like I think it was awesome, like seeing someone's story. Not that it's awesome to have it, obviously. Luckily, like mine was not as harsh as yours. Still emotional, but not as harsh. Like they were able to like take mine out with surgery and stuff like that, and like they just they didn't do like any harsh rounds of chemo or anything like that. We caught it at a very early stage. So something that I really appreciate about you, obviously, is that you were very open about your story and like everything you went through. And I think it's important for people that are going through those kind of things, not even just testicular cancer, just cancer in general, because the public, like, they think that people who have cancer go through one thing and one thing only, but everyone like goes through cancer in a different way, and not everyone understands that. Everyone just automatically thinks like, oh, well, I have cancer, this is how it's going to be, and it's not. Like everyone has their own story, and that's why like I love hearing everyone else's story on how they are. Just like Brittany, my drag mom, she's going through colon cancer right now, and hers is her story. She's feeling fine. Like she just started chemo this week. They took everything out with surgery, but because there was 3 different kinds of cancers, they wanted to go ahead and do 6 months worth of chemo just to alleviate those risks that were there. So but she feels good enough to go to work. So I mean, it just depends, I guess, like longevity and the serious amounts that you're doing. But I don't know. I just appreciate you coming on here and talking about it as well, because it's just more known to the public, and that we can get your story out there. So I don't really have a whole lot of questions. I just have more so gratefulness.
Yeah, well, I like to say I'm an open book, literally. So
Right.
any questions that anybody has about testicular cancer or my journey or anything like that, I am 100% ears. And
I would like to
willing
know. And Gemini, maybe, and I didn't know this about you, Gemini, until right here, and so you could have said something. How do you find out? Like, was there? It's a weird question, but like you hear about lumps in the breast for women. How do you find out? And what happens if you don't get it checked? Could it last years? Could it?
So mine started, I was diagnosed in February of 2020, but it actually started about a year before that. And the best way I can describe it is it started as kind of discomfort, like a testicle was twisted and it wouldn't untwist, is kind of the best way I can describe it. And so I felt like maybe I slept against my pillow wrong or slept wrong, something like that. But after a couple months, when I was going to the bathroom one day, I could tell a noticeable lump in my scrotum. And so that caused me to go get checked out. My blood work came back normal. My CT scans came back normal. And so they just thought it was a clump of cysts, so a larger clump of cysts than they had typically seen. But they gave me some antibiotics and basically said, let us know if anything changes or, what happens. After a few months, it was getting bigger and causing more discomfort. And so I went back a second time, and that was when they said, yeah, your CT scan showed signs of cancer, and we think you should have an orchiectomy or removal of a testicle right away. Well, I was 27 when I was diagnosed. So I was like, he told me if I wanted a second opinion, I could get one. I was like, yeah, 27, I'm going to get a second opinion. So I got a second opinion from, it actually ended up being 3 other doctors. And so all 5 doctors agreed that it was testicular cancer and that I needed to
Now,
have
Paul,
it out
what
right
were you
away.
going to do by number 5? Were you just not going to believe the other 4?
Girl, they were all in the room at the same time. So It was like 2 doctors and 2 students, which was super awkward at the beginning of my journey.
But you ask them
like,
all. You're
there's
like,
like 4 people in the room with you, but
no, I'm fine.
but at the
I'm
same time, I
fine.
was like, okay, all 4 of y'all say the same thing.
You
that's
sound like
good
you
to
have
know.
my level of denial there, and I like that.
Probably.
My story is very kind of the same as that, except mine was Valentine's Day, and I'd have surgery the same day. On Valentine's Day, they took my testicle out. I was like, "Fuck it, let's do it."
You had hospital food
Yeah,
on
they
Valentine's.
moved quick.
No, you couldn't have hospital food on Valentine's.
I couldn't have
the day
hospital
after.
food on Valentine's
The
Day.
day after you got
People
hospital
kept bringing me stuffed animals, and I woke up out of surgery pissed off because I didn't realize that having a testicle removed means that I had to have a catheter, and I never had a catheter before. So funny story, I was like waking up out of surgery, groggy as shit, just I have to pee, like trying to get out the bed. So I'm strapped to the bed as I'm getting wheeled around the corner. My mom and my boyfriend at the time standing right there, just looking at me, and I said, "Stop looking at me." I was horrible. It was the worst thing ever. And then my mom handed me the stuffed animal. I'll never forget. I still have the stuffed animal. It's a little teddy bear with a little heart on it. And I just chunked it back at her. I said, "I want a fucking stuffed animal. I have to pee." So, but needless to say, it was not great coming out of that for sure. But happy Valentine's Day.
Wow.
Dang, that's a rough day.
I don't even know how to. You can't top that, Paul. In fact, we're gonna let you go. And I'm kidding. Okay, that's a lot, and I'm gonna have to. Which hospital were you at?
Me, I was at ETMC in Tyler before it was UT.
Okay. Okay. I was about to say
Because
I don't
Good
know who their
Shepherd did the
provider-
same thing, kind of like what Paul went through. Did all the tests, nothing showed up. Blah 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 blah, and then all of a sudden I go to ETMC for my second opinion, and everything is like it just happens super quick. And I was like, ah.
So my grandmother, she was diagnosed, and she got, like, I think it was already stage 4. It was very developed in lots of parts of her body. She chose not to fight it, and she had a few months, but that could have been diagnosed so much sooner. And I always wondered, like, what made her. I think she might have been at the hospital for something else, and like for somebody else, and a doctor said, "Oh, get this checked." But how long could you have gone? And how many people out there do you think have been living with this for a year, 2 years, 5 years? Like,
And that's the thing, because I was following the best diet I followed. I was on the best gym routine I'd ever been. I was probably in the best
well, you were
shape.
27 and gay. Yeah.
And I had no idea that I had cancer. I could have continued, who knows how many months it spread before I had found out, if there wasn't that visible sign, because physically I felt fine, which is kind of the scary part of you have like this deadly disease, but you feel just fine. And so it's almost kind of a trance of you're going through all of these motions, but do I really need to go through them? Like, I know I need to go through them, but it's like a weird mental
Would I be
thing.
okay if
Feel fine, but knowing that something else could happen? Like,
yeah, no, I get that thought. There's a lot of people out there that think, well, hey, maybe if I don't treat my high blood pressure, it is fine. If I don't treat my HIV, it is fine. And you have those people like that live that way. And so I can get that. What my question there would be is, do you now know that you feel better, that wasn't fine? Like, how do people know what isn't fine if they've never experienced it? And then that turns into, do they check for everything when you go to a checkup? How do they know to check for certain things?
in my case, they didn't. So it was, and part of that was I didn't go to the doctor very often. So, I was 27, I was healthy. I only had insurance at my job that I had at the time when I was diagnosed, which thankfully, God bless, I had. But before that, I didn't have health insurance. So I was like, you know what? I'm 27. I'm healthy. There's no need to go to the doctor, and quote, waste money, if you will, is how I thought of it at the time. But it is weird because I never truly felt like I had cancer. I would get somewhat sick from the chemo drugs, but in my mind, that was attributed to the chemo drugs. I had a harsh recovery from surgery, and in my mind, that was attributed to the surgery. Like, I never felt like I truly had cancer. And so that has been a mental block for me in some respects, especially when people are like, oh, you're a cancer survivor, or you're a cancer warrior, or something like that. Like, I never felt like I really went through a battle per se to feel like I justified that title. And so that's kind of one of those blocks as well, I guess you could say.
Why the second book? Like, what? Because I didn't know about the second book till today, so I will announce that I have no idea what I'm talking about here. So I would like to know what else needed to be said that I'm going to read, and then why.
Yeah, so Contentment was my second book, and it's a science fiction novel based on an idea that I had while I was going through treatment. When you're sitting in the chair about to get chemo, they bring these bags out that look like they're just clear white liquid. But they've got extra nurses there. They've got to read your name out to each other, your date of birth, confirm the dosages and everything with each other. And I was dang, what would happen? Like, I'm just trusting these people to put this into my body and trust that it's going to work. What would happen if they added something or something didn't work the way that they hoped it would? And so I kind of dreamt up this scenario where a guy in a very similar situation to me was diagnosed with testicular cancer. But the chemo that he was given gave him the power to control electricity, and kind of what would be the ramifications and consequences of having that power and how his diagnosis would be affected by getting that. And so I kind of dreamt up this plot of this guy in a similar situation, but worse, and used that as therapy to kind of get me through the situation that I was going through. So there's a lot of parts of it that are me and almost specific to my situation. And then there's others that were kind of a little farther out there, obviously, and kind of respect to what I was going through.
Okay, cool. And again, I'm sorry, I had no idea. And so I don't want people to think I'm just rude. I told him earlier, it's like, I had no idea until I was doing some stuff today, because I would have already been stalking you through that book. The Gemini, she's letting me tell all the jokes tonight. So she's just letting me crash.
What? I'm not letting you crash.
Okay, cool. So I guess the last thing I had, I kind of referenced it earlier. Besides some of the generic stuff about afterwards, the community, the acronym, I like to call it, like the big old freaking acronym. It's every single person but one classification. If that doesn't say problem, but the acronym is very superficial. And we, like you said, you were in the best shape of your life. You were working out. Like, it is not easy to get old. It is not easy to go through any kind of problems that makes you look weak in our community. How did you mentally prepare for that? Because let's not play. You're Paul Savage.
Yeah, so I mean, we do kind of have that perception, and so that was something that I really had to get through. So I went through 3 rounds of chemo that lasted about 3 months, and had 2 different types of testicular cancer. One was resistant to chemo, and one wasn't. They weren't quite sure how much of each, or if I had each. It just appeared to be that way. So they had me go through the chemo first in hopes that maybe that would be the end of it, kind of thing. And after I got through the chemo, they did the CT scan, and there was still testicular cancer up in my abdomen, which meant I had to have what they call an RPLND, which is about an 8-hour surgery where they went in kind of under my right armpit and came across to my stomach and down. So I've got a scar that kind of goes from my armpit across to my stomach and down. And that was one of the tough things that I had to kind of deal with afterwards in my mind. Number one, because I was in the best shape I had been in before. And then now I was going to have this scar, and kind of how would that impact me moving forward? And then even after I healed from the surgery, I ended up forming a hernia, which of course gave me another kind of mental hurdle of,
You went from like
it's
the
not
most health to the weak.
like, and kind of coming to terms with that was a little rough. But I don't know. I think in a way the blog posts were not only a blessing for others, but for myself as well, because everything moves so fast when you're going through that it was a reminder to me and showed me how far I had truly come in a short period of time too. And it was seeing how far I had truly come that allowed me to give myself grace about the body and the place I'm in now.
I find that I don't know what it would have been like before the love that we get on social media. So there's a lot of hate that we can get, but there's so much love. And I can't imagine, like, if you were out there and you were with a family that didn't support, whether you're gay or you were having cancer and you lived alone and you had nobody around you, what it would be like if that lack of support, that lack of love, that lack of caring was what you thought that was all that was out there. So I have found that social media, for me, I had no idea that East Texas is where all my love is. And like, it's not because of her. But it is. Like, I think you're 100% correct about the blog thing. And I think that was probably very smart, because you're Paul, but I can understand that probably gave you a sense of like, I can do this. It doesn't matter. Like, I'm having a weak day, but I have all these angels that I'm standing on their shoulders. And I feel bad for the people who don't have that, who don't use that as an outlet, because there's so much support out there.
Well, and on that note too, you probably don't know about this either because I don't promote it very often.
You're not married.
But shortly after the book was published, I had multiple people reach out and say, I wish I would have chronicled my cancer journey, or I wish I would have done something similar. And so I actually have this book that's available on Amazon. It's a hardcover. And it has all the different areas for you to track different things that were happening in your journey, how you were feeling that day, notes about it, and it allows you to kind of create a blog post and chronicle your cancer journey the same way that I did.
That is really cool. And I mean, it doesn't show that actually yet on online, just so you know.
Send me the link for it.
I sure will. I believe it's only available on Amazon.
Well, I'm on Amazon right now. Like, I'm showing them. And
between one of y'all, I only have one computer and my phone has a business call on it right now. So.
I'm just waiting for somebody to notice that I changed my last name on here.
Oh my God. On that note, I've got to leave you guys. I do have
no, I got to change it back before you leave. Anyway, he's never going to talk to me again. He's like, we're not working for you.
I appreciate you coming on, Paul. I hope this is not the last time that I see you. Hopefully we'll get to get on and do some more of this, because Allison likes to start a lot of shit with a lot of people, if you haven't noticed. So, and she likes to say
before you go,
she gonna drop it before she leaves.
Before you go, I would like to know, inspired or irritated?
Irritated today, and I think I spoke about that a little bit at the beginning. Just irritated with how people act, like with everything, how immature people are this week. That's why I'm having to jump on a work call at 8:00 at night. Love y'all. Have a good rest of the cast. Mwah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it is coming up to the end anyway. So, Mr. Paul, we talked about this earlier. Before that, what else would you like to say? What would you like all 8 people that are listening to know?
So I think the biggest thing is to make sure that we're doing self-checks, because testicular cancer is the #1 cancer in men ages 15 to 45, and it has a 95% curability rate if it's caught early. And if I had known to do self-checks or even how to do them, I could have probably prevented myself from having that major 8-hour surgery and going through a lot more than I did. But the good news is it is curable if it's caught. So just being aware of your own body and knowing what normal feels like, so you know what if something's abnormal, is so important to your health.
You often hear about, like we said earlier, women knowing that you self-check, but men, it's perception be strong and everything. How do you get that outreach out there to say, hey, this is important and this is how you do it, and you're talking to younger people? How do you do that?
So I think the best way that I do that is just through transparency and honesty about my own journey. So something that I wasn't really planning to get into, but I mean, I got into it on live
Oh
radio,
my
so that's
God,
what
it's
it
like I'm
is.
Barbara Walters here today. I've gotten two things.
It, so after I had my orchiectomy, I had the ability or opportunity, however you want to look at it, to get a prosthetic testicle, which a lot of people don't know even exists. Um, kind of laugh looking back at it because my first thought was, as a graphic designer, I'm like, well, it's got to be symmetrical, you know. So I actually had a prosthetic testicle that was put in at the same time as my orchiectomy. Um, so I think
And that
it's
kind of
just
balances
being
everything out mentally
completely
and
honest. Yeah, I think it does. Particularly for me, it may not be that way for everybody, but kind of like I said, my brain has that designer brain. So
well, no,
for
I
me,
think that
it probably
most people, like, if you like, you're used to something, if it's not there anymore, like, that causes psychological damage. I think as a trans woman, gearing up for things that are going to happen to me, I have 100% read and thought, and like every scenario's in my mind. So when, like, used to saying that, like, my gosh, why haven't I read that? So like, that's, I mean, that makes sense. That makes sense. It's just guys don't talk about those
yeah,
things. You didn't even know it existed.
so for me, it was just a super, like, it didn't feel like it was my body, even though it was in my body at first. Like I wouldn't look, I wouldn't touch down there for like a week after my surgery, just because I was nervous about what what had happened, like what part of my body was different. And it took getting used to things and like coming around to the treatment, I guess you could say, and all of the surgeries and everything happening so quickly to come to terms with that and be confident again. Um, but I think it's that transparency that we need more, that will allow more people to become confident too, because I'm sure I'm not the only one that is in that situation or will go through that situation in our lifetime.
I like the third book that you just promoted, which, by the way, I can't find it on Amazon. So if you give me the link, I'll put it on the edited version of this. Um,
I just
and
sent it to you in the chat.
oh, yay! And then, so I had another follow up question there, and what did what was the first thing you did when you knew you were okay? And I'm sure that was a euphoria moment, but I know you like to travel. Did you travel? Like, what did you do, even like as a reward to yourself for surviving?
So I didn't travel. I was diagnosed in February of 2020. So the majority of my journey was kind of through the entire COVID pandemic, which played an interesting role. But I think the first time I realized I was going to be okay was after my RPL&D surgery. It took about 2 days for the doctor to come in, but to say the word remission, which is the only word I wanted to hear after all that. And I remember I basically just completely broke down. And there's a chapter about that in the book, about how I called basically my family members one by one from the hospital, because I was by myself. I wasn't allowed to have anybody with me at that point because of COVID. And just, I could barely get the words out, and they were thinking something was wrong. And I'm like, no, it's actually positive. But that was just probably the most emotional part of that journey, was finally hearing the words remission and that they were able to get it all.
The last thing, because you're going to make me cry, but you mentioned the other day about this time of year when you go for your checkup, because you do hear about people going into remission so much. What, somebody that's never had cancer, that will go get checked now. I don't know if there's ways to, when you're cured of it or when it's gone, is it gone forever? How does it come back? Like what can you do? Do they tell you what to do? And why do you have so much anxiety? Is it just a mental thing? Do you know that you're healthy going in? Like,
So the doctor split it, there's a single digit chance that it would come back. But I've always kind of joked that I'm percent small, just because of the small percent chance of getting testicular cancer, the small percent chance that it had spread before I caught it. It seemed like everything that could happen had happened, is the way that I felt at the time.
yeah.
So in that respect, what was the second part of that question?
Well, how did you, do they tell you what to look for? Is there ways to prevent it from coming back? Because there's no, right? Because there was no
There's
way
not
to
really
prevent
a way to prevent it, but they do. They had been doing kind of monthly blood checks all the way up until a few months ago, and then now kind of to yearly CT scans, which kind of like I mentioned earlier, the blood work never picked up on the cancer even when I had it. So even though they do that every month, that's not really something that I look towards as an indicator.
it. Didn't make you
And
feel
so
safe.
having that scan, right, having that CT scan this week for the yearly checkup is the one that I look forward to, if you will. But it's also one of the most stressful, because I know if there's going to be an indicator, it's likely going to be in that scan. And
How
there
long do you have to
was,
wait for all those results? Is it pretty instant, I think?
so we had the scans on Monday and a results appointment on Tuesday, thankfully. So it's usually pretty quick. But going back to kind of that support thing, I remember there was a guy that I met. He was actually in our community, that when I was going through this journey, and he was only 24, 23. So he was slightly younger than me at the time. But we were going through testicular cancer together. But his had progressed to stage 4. And I'll never forget, right before my birthday that year, he went into hospice. And he would still message me from hospice and ask how I was doing with my journey and if I was okay. And that was really profound to me. That was a level of support that I wasn't expecting, particularly from somebody going through something that I was already going through and was not uncertain, I guess you could say, of their future. He actually passed away on my birthday, and he had just reached out a couple of weeks before to ask how I was doing. And so it just shows how much support means, that even he in that situation would reach out to me because he was getting support too. And so I think just kind of playing off of that and understanding how much support can help people in any situation, not just in cancer, can have a profound impact on somebody's life.
When you think about God, I'm gonna cry. When you think about, like I said earlier, the people in our community, and you know, you're a gay male. I can say, like, I'm a trans woman. Like, you cannot have family in either of those situations, and it can. What he did, he's an angel, and so I don't even know his name, but I'm gonna cry. So that's pretty cool. because it is so important. And if you look back, I did this connection campaign at the holiday. I think it's so important to connect to people, and he connected with you when he knew you needed him, and that's pretty cool.
And on that, I think it's worth noting too that kind of talking about some of the stigmas, of course, being in our community and getting testicular cancer, a lot of the assumptions that I got was, oh, you got testicular cancer because you're gay or you're bi, or, you know, like, obviously that's what it was because it's related to genitalia, I guess. But it had nothing to do with that. There's nothing that I could have done different to have not gotten it. It was literally a % chance of me getting it. Even one of my dad's first questions to the doctor was, my dad was a Vietnam veteran and served 2 tours in Vietnam. And so, of course, he was exposed to Agent Orange. And one of his first questions was, did Agent Orange give my son this? And again, the answer was no. It was just a % chance that I could have gotten it, and I got it. And so I think that perception has been a little difficult to kind of overcome too, because that's what a lot of people think when they find out you're in this community and you have testicular cancer. It seems like,
you know, this is not going to be solace to you, but I've learned, because I told you earlier, I've become stronger being a trans woman, and what I've learned is I'm not going to change what they think anyway. If they are going to think those things, let them think those things, because if you prove yourself, if you prove the point and say, no, this isn't because of this, they're still going to think about the next thing. Like, you have a runny nose. Oh my God, it's because you're gay. Oh, you tripped. It's because you don't have balance. But you're gay. It could be the most stupid thing. And so you don't listen to those people. You listen to all the people that read your blog. And I think that you are very inspiring. I think you've always been inspiring. Like, I joke about the crush thing. I'm not joking, but I joke about the crush thing. But it's because you do put yourself out there. And you were one of my inspirations. So, you know, as I've always, for the last 2 years, I've said I was a bad gay man. I did not promote and help the community. And I wanted to be a better trans woman. And you were always one of my inspirations, because you didn't care about always looking perfect, although you did. Like, you just put yourself out there because you were real. You live a real life. And I thought that was pretty cool. And so thank you for sharing.
well, thank you. I appreciate that.
If you could go anywhere in the world because you like to travel, where would you go? And one day when we're as big as Ricky Lake was, I would say Oprah, but people don't know who Ricky Lake is. She smokes weed up in Oregon or something now. I don't know what she does. But one day we'll send you on a trip when you say that. But for now, where would you emotionally go?
So back when I was in college, we of course had to take language electives. I took Spanish in high school, started taking Spanish in college, and then changed that major shortly after I got back from studying 2 weeks abroad in Paris, France. And so I've always said I had an amazing time there. It's such a beautiful country. And I always said I wanted to go back after I finished my language studies. And so now I graduated, that would probably be my next first trip overseas, would be to go back to Paris, France.
That would be amazing. And I think that you'll get there. Not right now, though, because a big drug kingpin just got no, seriously, they were transporting him like yesterday, and like there was a shootout, like a movie, and he's no longer going to jail, but there's a massive manhunt. And the French, I was like, they don't do that. So don't go there now because he's free.
I know we didn't have that. They were just filming Hunger Games when we were there.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
That shows you how long ago it was. I was like,
how was the Hunger Games a movie? That is so corrupt and weird. It is,
but it's also drawing
cool.
attention to a lot of things in some ways.
Okay, so I'm going to tell you what I'm obsessed with. So I'm inspired, which is you, but also I've been thinking a lot about the best little whorehouse in Texas lately, because I started referencing it for some reason. And then it's made me think like, okay, Dolly Parton's greatness, But then it's made me think of why the hell did they let that movie be made? Because nowadays there would be so many like, you can't do this, but that is Texas. Like we would have a whorehouse. But watch the movie, people. Don't they horrors with morals.
I haven't seen a movie. I've seen the musical, but
Yeah, and so I'm inspired by just the fact that we used to take risk like that, and now you can't. And I think I don't know. For some reason I'm obsessed with the best little whorehouse in Texas. Now you go, and you're probably going to be all serious.
well, I'm not even gonna lie. I saw that probably back in like 2015, so I don't even fully remember the plot. I remember I enjoyed it.
It's but I didn't either. All you remember is Dolly Parton singing
Yeah,
and
exactly.
and those things. And so, like, but the fact that there is even a movie called The Best Little Whorehouse in Texas, and Dolly Parton did it, and it was made back in the day, that is, to me, something cool.
It is pretty cool.
Yeah. Okay. So, what has you inspired or irritated?
I'm gonna throw a curveball on you because I've got both.
Do both.
So irritated as a small business owner, wearing all the caps means you're the owner, the designer, and unfortunately the bill collector. And so I've been playing bill collector this week. Also had some really great meetings with some new clients that are coming on board. So I'm inspired about the future, and I know they've all been prayed into our partnership, so they're going to pay their bills, and it's going to be great.
Okay, so that puts us out. No, I am. I enjoyed our conversation today. That's another inspired, and so thank you for everything. I think you said that, and that's. I mean, that's a wrap. Is there anything else you have for us?
No, I just wanted to
You're
thank
speaking
you.
to a lot of trans women right now. There's a lot more trans women that watch this than gay men, and I know that's kind of skewed. But if you could say anything to that community, what would you say?
I think I would say probably. So one of the main messages that I wanted to convey through the blog post that ultimately became the book was that you can find hope, positivity, and faith even in the darkest of times. And humor plays a big part in that, especially in our community. And so I just would really encourage everyone to take a moment and reflect, because sometimes things move so fast, you don't have time to do that, because there really is positivity, hope, and faith in every situation if we look for it. And so I just encourage you to look for it and find that for your life.
And be the person who calls and checks on people all the time. Like, take the time to do that so that you're helping that come to fruition.
Or even send a text. Like, it takes 5 seconds to just show somebody that you're thinking of them or you care.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for being on. And I'll tell you later who's going to play you in a movie of your books. But I don't want to embarrass you here. I've already got this thought out in my head. I thought